welcome to our YouTube channel. And I'm Chris Jennings with Chris Jennings Group. My partner, Anthony Mayo, is joining me today. And the two of us are planning to spend some time discussing a couple of relevant topics that have been coming up regularly with clients of ours. And we're going to hit a myriad of topics in this time. And we hope you will get comments to us as they come up. If you got questions, submit them, click the link below. And we're hoping you find this super useful. I'm going to open with, when people talk around sales, and usually what I've heard time and time again is the sales department is often thought of the wild, wild west of most companies. And in some cases that's super accurate, and in some cases not so much. And so really what we're often doing, I believe, is helping implement a process, build a playbook as it relates to the organization that we're working with. And there's no doubt in my mind that any team will function at a higher level with a really sound playbook that the entire team is well versed in. So Anthony, I guess my first question for you is, what do you think some of the keys are to, number one, developing a sales playbook and a sales leadership playbook? And how do you go about getting that implemented if somebody's not really got something yet and they've just been kind of pulling things together? So, because those are things I see commonly. So I'd love to get your take on that.
Well, it's a good one. And as you know, Chris, we've worked with a lot of teams, so we get to see, and every team's a little different. I totally get that. And so part of it is getting to know the team. But there's lots of great examples in the world of what great teams look like. Great teams typically have a couple common themes. They're aligned on their objectives. They've decided, hey, we want this. And once the organization's goals are aligned, then how well are the players aligned and the culture aligned to get to that objective? And I think that's probably the first thing, is getting everybody's like mind share, or what Napoleon Hill really called what did he called, there was a name he had for that, where it was everybody got together and they were of like mind.
I'll text him and I'll ask him. Well,
text him, and the term is slipping me right now, but it's like a brain trust or a group that comes together. Like a mastermind? Mastermind, yeah, there it is. Yeah. Mastermind, good. Yeah. Mastermind group. And as we have a mastermind group, then it's like, okay, we now have like an objective. What's our plan or our structure to get there? And mutually agreeing on the structure for the organization and for the individuals. And I think it has to be for both. You look at a championship team, the Rams happen to be going to the Super Bowl. And, one of the things I know, Aaron Donald has worked his whole career hard on a very professional career for himself, and being in alignment with what the Rams want to get done, and the owner of the Rams, like investing in that facility. There's really good, clear alignment all the way through that organization. Yeah. Now, once you have those goals and that alignment and you have a structure to support it, I think, what does our internal communication look like? And that all creates a really strong confidence and conviction of the team. And there's a sense that we have as human beings of belonging, and we're part of our tribe. It's really, really, I think, important. And I see that usually, and anytime I work with, that's the first thing I take on. How about you, Chris? What do you see that's outside or in or outside of that?
Well, so first I'll comment on what Aaron Donald, you probably saw him in the game last weekend when the Rams really needed to pull it together defensively, and Aaron Donald pulling the team together on the sideline. And, you could see the conviction, you could see the consensus, you could see that everybody was aligned towards the common goal. And I've always loved it, when peers inside the group are taking on leadership responsibilities, and really, because a lot of people salespeople that you and I have worked with certainly have probably pushed back on their managers. Don't like being second guessed, don't like being micromanaged, all the things that we've all heard for years. But one guy or gal to another guy or gal saying, hey, what are you doing to perform so well? This is what I'm doing. You should try some of this. I think that is always going to be more commonly accepted So if you can build a mastermind program or a mentorship program inside your organization, great. If you personally are working solo and you don't have a mastermind group or a mentor that you're counting on to just be able to air out what you think are the goals and you think are the alignment, that's a problem. And I would say one of the things that I see in regards to this, most owners of companies and most sales leaders would like to have clear alignment. They just get buried and busy. And I think that in the multitude of things for them to get to, that a lot of times the team suffers because there isn't the clarity of focus, right? So that causes people to wander, that causes people maybe to be confused. And starting right with the activity level of, hey, what should I be doing day in, day out? I think, I've been reciting chop wood, carry water, and that's what we do in any role, and you got to figure out what's your version of chop wood, carry water. And is that, asking for X number of referrals? Is that, running a webinar series? Like, what does that mean for you? And if you or your team doesn't have clarity on what those activities are, what the chop wood, carry water regiment is for your group, it's going to lead to a lot of wandering, a lot of squandered time, and then you're probably always feeling a little bit behind the eight ball, right?
Yeah, you bring up a great point here, and you keyed into this early on as we first started working together, and it's just how much time should I spend in the intentional, mindful part of my day and not reacting? And there's just so many distractions, right? And we've got to come in from everywhere, ops and texts and emails, and owner wants to do a meeting. And, where we landed is that you really need to have a very specific regimen and a very specific amount of time to grow your business and to build your skill set. And I think that's often overlooked, that simple element of how many years has Aaron Donald spent building his career and learning how to play football and getting past offensive linemen, right?
Yeah.
So
you could zero in on how did he perform in those last 15 minutes of a particular game. But the reality is the performance we saw on the field was built, that the ability to perform at that level on the field was built in all of the hours of consistent practice, consistent development, feedback from mentors. I think you and I both know I believe the average NFL team carries about 18 coaches. Maybe it's upwards of 24. It's somewhere in that range. And so those people at that level are getting all kinds of constant feedback on every nuanced aspect of how they perform. And maybe to the point, maybe to a greater detail than most people could handle, but not getting any coaching over an extended period of time, a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year, there's got to be some regularity, some feedback loop. So, I love the mentoring. I love the, now I'm spacing on the word, mastermind.
Yeah,
right?
mastermind concept.
The mastermind group. And I think, you and I have seen that anytime we gather a group of people together, they're getting as much from each other as they are from us. I'm certain of that. And it's what I see is it's a reprioritization of what's important. And in the busyness of life and in the inundated amount of text, email, other messages that we get, being overly attached to your social media feed, the things that we initially set out to as priorities lose priority. Mm-hmm. And if you can reprioritize, and it was funny, I ran a program earlier today in the Visage community where a number of the members cited, these are some things that I know about. I have lost sight of them. I used to do them.
Hear that a lot.
And I need to get back to whatever it was, right?
Yeah, well, I love what you shared about football. I think we drive people crazy with our sports analogies because not everybody's a football or sports fan. But I read recently that an NFL football game only has actually 13 to 14 minutes of live time of actual play time in a game. So think of how much players prepare for that. There's 40 hours a week, and there's probably 5 hours of film. There's, 20 hours in the gym. There's, 10 hours on the play. There's memorizing the playbook. There's kind of working through all the things, and how much effort and time is put together for that 13 minutes that you really jump on the field and make it happen. And you're ingraining those habits and those reactions. So they're in flow. And I heard this great talk about how when we're intentional and mindful, that we have access to 20 bits of information per second, right? And that's a great spot to be because we're living intentional and proactive. But if we can get that ingrained into our subconscious, we now get into a state called flow. When we're in flow, it's 20 million bytes of information. So it's a whole nother level. So Aaron Donald isn't going, do I go left or go right? He's just doing it, right? He doesn't even think twice about it. And that's a powerful place to be as a top performer.
Yeah. Developing the muscle memory. And I would say there's probably a real parallel there for the average salesperson in front of a customer for whatever you're doing during your 40-ish hour week. How much time do you get where you are influential with the customer? And in an entire 40-hour week, you may only have, 14, 15 minutes of influence. When you come right down to it, and even if you had 10 sales calls, it may be a minute and a half of influence in each one of those sales calls where you had a window of opportunity to influence the customer in the right direction. And not prepared, that we've all squandered, those moments. Another thing I would share about the importance of mentorship, and especially as it relates to some of the smaller to mid-sized organizations where they just get stretched for staff. If you work for a very large organization, you probably feel like you have plenty of eyes on you, and there's departments devoted to your success, et cetera. But the majority of people work in companies, certainly with fewer than 100 employees, and what happens is, in that size organization, the amount of available mentors that you would respect and want to listen to is very limited. And your amount of actual time that those mentors have to devote to you is very limited. Pete Carroll, who I know you're a Pete Carroll fan, and I was listening to a book of his not too long ago. He shared a story that he said stuck with him his whole career and has helped him a lot considerably in his NFL coaching career. And actually, I think he had spent some time by that time he'd been coaching, at a pretty high level for a number of years. But he said he met with I think it was a former general who was in charge of the Ranger program at West Point.
Okay.
And the Ranger program is the elite version of the Army and the Armed Forces. And they said very consistently for a number of years, only 1/3 of the people that they nominated for the Ranger program was able to complete the program.
Oh, wow.
And it was a consistent number year after year after year. And it felt like they were wasting a lot of energy, time, money, resources to have, 2/3 of the people not make it. And, it's not like they were selecting the worst in the class. They're picking the very top of the class people to enter into the Ranger program. And so they decided let's just get people. We need to study this. So for this year, when we put somebody into the program, let's assign them somebody just to watch what they're doing. And at the end of that first time where they did that, they went immediately from 1/3 of the people graduating the program to 2/3 of the people graduating the program.
Wow. So
they doubled their effectiveness without giving them any other direction, just then to watch the participants in the program. And so when you think about the effectiveness of helpful mentorship, just knowing that there's somebody paying attention to you, so that in those quiet moments when you might be ready to go play golf at 2 o'clock or work on your chip shot. And when you could make another 3 hours plus worth of calls, just knowing that there's somebody else who has eyes on you with your best interests at heart really can make a difference.
Yeah, significant.
And I think a lot of times in sales roles, it can often, you're on your own a bit, especially these days, right? If you're perhaps working out of your house, you're on Zoom, and I can imagine the distractions are higher than they've ever been. So just knowing somebody else is watching, I think could help. And if it's somebody that you really trust and respect, that's been there, done that, and helped a lot of people, boy, that could help a lot. And
yeah.
So for any of our audience, I would just say that currently does not have that and is too proud to bring that up, or feels like by bringing that up, it will be a sign of weakness. I would encourage them to just reevaluate that thought process and maybe search around to see who's available for some sort of mentorship going forward.
Yeah, I get that. I see a lot where people don't get buy-in. Like, in other words, our corporate team has decided this is your goal, right? And nobody buys off on that, right? So it's so important to talk with people about, like, what's their why and how do you get connected? Like, why are you coming to work? And more I see people's why and what they want to accomplish is way bigger than what the company expects for them. And that seems to be a big disconnect that I see a lot of. And a really good coach, mentor, someone's keeping their eye on helping people is going to keep their goal in front of them. So it has a whole different vibe and feel, right? It's like, hey, you said you wanted to win a Super Bowl. This is what it takes.
Yeah. Well, so, that will always make a difference. Let me ask you, why do you think sometimes it breaks down between the salesperson and the sales manager? Because I wonder about that. Because I'm sure there's not a sales manager on the planet that doesn't want their team to achieve their goals, but why does it break down? Why does it not work?
There's a couple of things I think that go on, and it's really changing, I think, on our society. I'm thinking like back, 20 or 30 years ago, it was they were an authority figure and you wanted to do everything they said so you didn't get in trouble. And it seems more and more like people don't want that. They want collaborativeness. They want let's work together. And I do see managers that are really driven about, here's the goal that has to happen, and you've got to hit your goal. And I don't know if they ever really get connected or aligned the salesperson's why with the organization's why. That's a big one, I think. I also think that manager shows up as an authority figure to them. And some people are there. If we look at, there's a lot of different things like in the DISC profile, a lot of our salespeople are I's. They're low detail, high people, which makes them great in front of clients, but they're not always high task. And you get a sales manager, it might be very high task oriented, and they're driving for the task, and there's just a misalignment or not agreement about it. But if you can create that initial alignment on the objective and then speak the language that fits them, I have this funny joke that I share people about. My wife, we talked about it. We did this whole study on what's your love language, and it's such a big important thing about how you communicate. I kept buying her all these nice gifts. And she was like, "Oh yeah, that's nice, thank you. Oh yeah, that's nice, thank you." Like they weren't that important. And what I found out through a little bit of homework was that her love language wasn't gifts. That was actually mine. So I was communicating with her with my language, not her language, right?
Right.
It's very similar to managers, I think, and salespeople. And so, when I changed that, the little things I did really made a significant impact on what she heard and how I occurred to her. And we're not always conscious about how we occur to people, I think.
Again, I would go back to the busyness of life. So we've packed so much in to our lives that it's sometimes hard to be thoughtful about what's happening, why those things are happening, and it's easy to have knee-jerk reactions. So that's one. And then a lot of times, people are so self-focused and me-centered that it's hard to see outside of ourselves. And it, wouldn't surprise me if the love languages were off, and acts of service versus is it gifts? Is that
gifts? It's words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts. The other two are
physical touch.
And there's a fifth one in there.
There's a fifth one.
We probably need to brush up on that.
That's for another YouTube channel and another day. We'll cover that.
Yeah.
But your point to misalignment in terms of just going to DISC. So at the meeting I was at before, it came up. I said, it's DISC is one of the 4 sciences that you and I rely on to help people create a path forward and good communication and higher performance. And one of the things that I've noticed, so I was reviewing a profile with a couple of hiring managers yesterday on the East Coast, and you could clearly see that this person would make a good salesperson, certainly a good communicator, happy to be out front stage, would really pay attention to their audience, good EQ as well, one of our other sciences that we're fans of. And but he's probably going to be an administrative nightmare. Very low detail orientation. And if you think about it, what percentage of the salespeople out there are administrative nightmares, but they're really talented people?
Yeah.
And what accommodations are made. And so this topic comes up a lot, I think, where, okay, my sales team is complaining that they have too many to-dos, to clean up behind them. And I'm not a big fan of overburdening a salesperson with a lot of administrative tasks. Yet I want to know, before I augment their administrative support, that they're at least covering the basics in terms of getting those activities done that we agreed to, going back to your first point.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of give and take. So I think safely, if you keep your side of the street clean and you're doing your part, and you're doing, and if you're in a sales role or production role, getting your activities done day in, day out, week in, week out, with relative consistency. Nobody's perfect. Then I think your leadership will tend to meet you halfway and do more to help and offload whatever they can, automate, support you. So, but I think it's a first things first. We got to make sure that, to keep our side of the street clean, that we're doing our activities and, chop wood, carry water. So,
yeah, well, you've always been a great one talking about managing expectations. And I think it's a real core to healthy human relationships, right? And I've thought often about the process of how we hire, and even wondering if that relationship starts right. So we run an ad in a job description, which has nothing to do with what it's going to take to be successful, right? And then we bring them on board and say, okay, we give them this goal to hit, which a lot of it is like, we want you to sell $1 million, and they can't control if people buy or not. Right. So I also feel like a big part of this is like setting the relationship up right? Which is, if I set the relationship like, hey, I want you to make it, and here's realistically what you're going to have to do in a success profile to make it. And if this doesn't scare you away, then let's go to the next step, right? And from day one, you're setting in their mind, here's the culture, here's the expectation, here's why I'm hiring you. And you have continuity through the relationship. I hear this, probably one of the most common things I hear from top performers is, they brought me under this premise and now they're expecting this, and it's a complete change, right? And like, I don't know if I want that new change or that new thing, right? Ever. So, part of training is consistency and setting, I think, developing people is setting that expectation right up front.
Yeah. And I think people development, right? Which, versus training, I was going to zero in on the language a little bit. I don't think Aaron Donald would want to go to a training program to be taught how to work the defensive line. But I think if we said we've got a team of defensive line experts that have all been on the line and coached the line for several years and have X number of Super Bowl rings between them, I think he'd gladly sit down with those guys, review film with those guys, and look forward to the feedback, because that guy wants to win.
Yeah. And
I think, there's a number of people out there that probably, doesn't matter what level we're at, we could all use, I could be a lot better, right? I'm watching my eye contact. I'm not sure my eye contact is good enough on camera. And so, and there is, and I guarantee you at the end of this video, if you and I hired a professional video coach, they would point out a number of our mistakes that we've made, and I'm all ears, right?
Yeah.
And it's not going to burst my bubble if somebody points out what I'm not doing. In fact, I would prefer you tell me sooner rather than later, so I can, get the spinach out of my teeth. So now that I have teeth, I'm showing them off, but I had 2 years without teeth. So
are you all wrapped up and final now on that?
I'm getting closer, but
well, I always think the one you're supposed to have the camera like a hand length above your head. So I'm always going, is that a hand length?
Yeah, well, I don't. I must have 2 hands at least, and I ducked when I did it. But the point being, though, that doesn't matter how good we get. Hopefully we stay open to development, coaching along the way, and any of our programs. I think anytime you and I run a program, somebody in the audience is definitely teaching me something. Or for me, the same thing I was talking about before, they're reprioritizing what it is that I need to remember. Mm-hmm. And so, I've always felt like, our brains can only process so many bits of information. Absolutely. And in my opinion, there's probably 5 things professionally that I should be doing all the time and 5 things personally that I should be focused on all the time. Well, I could come up with a list of 100 things I need to do professionally and 100 things I need to do personally. If I just did the top 5 with some amount of consistency, I'd probably have a much better overall productive life, satisfying life, both professionally and personally. And if I have lost sight of what the top 5 things should be, then I really try to surround myself with great people like yourself to point it out to me. And I hope our audience has people around them that would be caring enough to do that in a thoughtful way that does not feel punitive or undermining or any of the other kind of negative aspects of coaching that can occur.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Chris, I'd like to switch gears. And I'm going to ask you some questions. You've worked in developing people and coaching and a lot of that over the last 30 years, really. Yeah. And, when you start thinking about what the top performers do, like what separates top performers, what makes people great, what kind of things do you see, share with, what 30 years of experience in coaching many companies, many people, there must be some patterns, some trends, some things that you see. What would you share with someone that's in the business world, wanting to have better business communication and really wanting to play at that high level? What do you see?
Yeah, well, so I'll kind of first start off with a couple of, internal values, and I think the right combination of humble and confident is probably the number one thing that will influence overall success, probably in any role, not just sales. Yeah. And so when I say like it's the perfect combination of humility and confidence that we're looking for, right? Not such a blown up ego that I think everything I know is how it is, and not so much self-doubt that when things are pointed out to me that I tend to crumble and I can't really tolerate it. So I think, finding your sweet spot of combining humility with confidence is really key. So how do you get there? You stay teachable, you ask for feedback, things like that. How do you build confidence? I think you build confidence by suiting up and showing up, doing what you said you would do, following through on your commitments. And because I think that confidence just comes from and I would love to pull out a John Wooden quote for you, but I have a feeling he's got themes in there that I'll bore off of, but doing what you said you would do and the sense of satisfaction, I really believe this is somewhere a John Wooden quote, the sense of satisfaction that you get from honoring the commitments that you made and doing what you said you would do to the best of your ability, that feels like success, and that builds confidence. And staying humble enough that along the way, that knowing doesn't matter how good you are or how good you've been, there's probably still another level, right? So I would say number one, work on humility, work on confidence. Salespeople are known for confidence, not always known for humility.
Yeah, that's a good one. And that's a hard balance to strike, right?
It is. Yeah. And I'd say we're all probably, always working on that to the right degree to get that, cabin pressure just right. Yeah. You don't want it over pressured. You don't want it under pressured. And the strings on your guitar, not too tight, not too loose, just right.
Yeah. Well, something that you shared resonated with me was, there's this humbleness in the beginning, and it's a little bit situational. The humbleness should always be there as a value, as you shared. But that humbleness is when I go into a situation, I really seek first to understand, and I'm kind of quiet and observant and take it in and listen and try to understand what's happening. What's the situation? What's the mindset of the person I'm talking with, communicating with? What's their emotional composure, like what's going on, right? And there can be a humbleness out of exploring that, which is very powerful. And I think this confidence comes with, like, I'm going to understand that and do what I can to help them, which transitions that humbleness to now confidence that I want to help and serve. And the word that resonates with me on confidence is integrity. And the definition of integrity, not good and bad integrity, but integrity of be whole and complete. So being whole and complete with who you say you are, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's just something I think intrinsic. If I say I'm someone that values being on time and I show up on time all the time, then I get power from that or confidence. But if someone says I'm always on time and I'm late, I feel the other side of it, right? So whatever you say and you believe you are, if you can land in that space, those two things really, I think, can be defining factors of how to balance that. And that's the thing I think we wrestle with all the time, right? So
yeah, I've heard it put, walk the walk versus talk the talk. And you've been around the block for a while, you know the right things to say. Are you living that way? So that to me, usually comes top of the list. And then I would say, from if I looked at just two other broader characteristics of top performers are busy. They're getting 4 hours a day of live dialogue. They're going live 4 hours a day on the phone or in front of a prospect or a client. They're in a Zoom meeting. They're at a factory tour. They're calling somebody on the way from one appointment to the next. They're making calls from the airport. They're really maximizing those windows of time that others would just toss out as lost. And I think they're focused on how to do that. They're intentional with that effort. And I think if you're maximizing those 4 hours each day of real great go live time, that is naturally going to lead you to a better outcome.
I like that. So humble and confident, that nice balance, getting at least 4 hours a day that you're out hustling, right?
Yeah.
And what else do you see?
And then I think in front of a customer, you talked about it, whether we got it from Covey or the Bible or wherever we picked it up from, seek first to understand before being understood. So do you own that as a concept? Have you internalized that at some level where and I've always kind of looked at it like this, as if you're meeting a new customer for the very first time. If you imagined a puzzle box that maybe you've done a puzzle over the holidays, and maybe you still do one. I like doing a actual physical puzzle. I still find it relaxing and enjoy doing it. And if you dump the puzzle box out on a table, it's almost like every time you meet a customer, you've got a bunch of puzzle pieces and they're on a table. And so in putting together a puzzle, you start looking for the straight edges, right? And you make the corners. Oh, I love the 4 corners, right? You find the corners and then you start matching up the colors. And little by little, this picture comes together that you're trying to see. And I think if you, in your encounter with the customer, if you really treated each customer like, hey, it's a puzzle that I'm trying to solve, and you're asking enough questions to better understand what are the cornerstone pieces that matter most, what are some of the nuances about all these blues when they all kind of look the same, and maybe you got to try a couple things just to see if you're getting closer, and being willing to try some stuff that doesn't work. You ever done that with a puzzle where you're like, this piece has to work, and then for them to go, no, that's not exactly right, and so you can maybe together with the customer put the whole picture together. And I think if over the course of time, whether that's 1 meeting, 2 meetings, years of working together, you're constantly working on building that completed picture together, and you're asking enough questions to better understand where they're coming from, and you're exploring their world and doing all the things that we would want them to do, and understanding who cares and everything that would be important. I think you'll be able to solve the puzzle if the puzzle is solvable. I'm trying to think if in the world of buying puzzles, I've ever bought one that was like a manufacturer's defect.
That would be a bad joke to play on someone. Here's a puzzle that actually won't fit together. I think that would be kind of tough. You said something, and I remember I was going in to meet with a client, and there was half the team was new, and half the team was kind of an older school sales team. And I was trying to think of how to summarize to them, like, what's your objective in a sales call? And this thing hit me. It seemed to be so simple. And it was like, let's make all the unknown factors known. Because if you know all the factors on how someone's going to make some kind of decision, right? And what the factors are, what's driving it, how much budget they have, and who's going to have some say, and the who, what, why, where, when, and all that. If you had all that known, it's really pretty easy to communicate with someone and actually get them to do business or transaction with you, right? So the process of sales communication is making all the unknown known. Yeah. Right. It's a very simple concept, but so powerful way to think about.
Making the unknown known and finding an easier way to talk about it.
Yes.
And so, in our theme and I've always, I think what I've personally enjoyed about the work that we do is making the conversation easier for people to have.
Yeah.
Because for so many people, there's so many difficult conversations in life. And if they're, nervous about having the conversation in the first place, the odds of it sounding normal and being productive and mutually, beneficial is pretty slim. So I think that's one of the gifts that we can give people, and in improving their communication and making it easier for both parties, right? Both.
Let's stay there. I think you're hitting on something really important. So what is it? if I'm a salesperson and I'm out there and I'm trying to get people to like me and I want to sell to them or I want to communicate with them, I don't want to make the unknown known, and I want to seek first to understand. And they're nervous about communication and conflict. What are factors in that? What helps them making these conversations easier or making it easier to talk about some of those things? What do you see?
Chop wood, carry water, because honestly, the more you have a conversation with customers, the more customers you speak to, you're going to iron out your differences. Now, does it take you a year, or does it take you 10 years, or does it take you 30 years to get to the point where you're finally having a really comfortable conversation? And I'll tell you what, if you're only having one sales call a week, it's going to take you a long time at that rate.
Yes, it is.
If you're having at least 5 sales calls, maybe 10 sales calls a week, you're probably going to accelerate your growth and have 10 years of growth in a year. So I always come back to that activity piece. From a pure, self-evaluation, hopefully you're recording some of what you say. I'm imagining at some point you and I will listen to this or watch this and think, oh, that was funny, or that was silly, or whatever.
Yeah.
Grammatically incorrect. I'm going to imagine we've got a few snafus. That's how we ended up in sales, not because we were A students.
Yeah.
At least for myself. But there was one other thing I wanted to. So I think the repetition and the willingness to look at it certainly is going to make things better. And hopefully, again, coming back to some of our themes earlier about having mentors, mentors that you could count on, you can bounce ideas off of, you can take along on a sales call that would have observations.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, as you say, that just popped into my head. I wrote them down so I would capture them. I actually think it's how we look at conflict, right? We tend to look at conflict as a bad thing, but I actually think conflict, if we lean into conflict, we're communicating. And we just see it from different point of views. And conflict creates alignment, which is what the first thing we talked about on the front end, which is, creating alignment. And it doesn't have to be in a bad way. Something that I learned from you did so well is you shared is, if you think it or feel it, say it politely and say it from their point of view. That creates amazing alignment, right? And I also thought about this concept when you were talking, which is a lot of people are out there trying to sell from an old point of view, which is, I want people to like me. I want people to like me. And that's kind of an old school 50s, 60s, 70s technique. Sure. And if people like me, then I'm never going to have a conversation about conflict. And I think you said something about like the good thing to do is always the right thing, but we have to transition to respect, right? From like to respect. And those are all components in how to have those conversations and be real and authentic and genuine and humble and curious and direct, but be assertive, but not aggressive, right? Those are all fit together in that whole equation.
Again, nuanced pieces that we have to work out over time, right? There's a fine line between being assertive and aggressive, right? And assertive, totally appropriate. Aggressive probably doesn't belong in a conversation. It's not going to have the same kind of reaction. And no doubt, I've always felt like, yes, the hard thing to do and the right thing to do are normally the same. And so if it feels difficult to do, it's probably the right thing to do. And you just got to lean into it and learn from it, right? I know we're getting close to the end here, but I do want to ask you a question as it relates to developing sales leaders. And I have worked with an account over the past year or two, and you shared they've had some tremendous success, 30% growth consistently year over year. And I think you work very closely with their sales leader and some of the other leadership team. I was curious, and we should get them on one of these and spend a little time with them and maybe share some of the details of what happened there. But I was curious from your perspective of what you saw helping the sales leader in particular develop their overall sales leadership skills, their comfort level in that role, and help the team to perform at a higher level. And it had, some of the natural challenges that many organizations do. I was just curious, any highlights from that group?
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about. Well, we'll get their permission before we name them live on camera.
I can think of 3 or 4 of them. So yeah, I am. And then one, we even grew, they went from 16 to 32 million this year. So a huge success. So there's a lot of that. And
yeah,
there's a couple things that I think, and I always come back to keep it to the 4 fundamentals. It's alignment and goals, which are together. That's one. Structure, and that's structure for the company and structure for them. And then internal communication. And when you get those pieces right, people just feel really grounded, and they feel like they're part of the tribe, they're part of the team, right? And there's been a lot of data that shows that that's really important to a human being. And then what's our external communication? So I have this methodology. I call it the boa constrictor method, right? So there's usually people are attacking, and you're going to do this, or they're so loosey goosey that everybody does whatever they want. But I just gently set goals, help them get their goals. And I put a structure in place and ask them to follow that. And I just slowly tighten that up, and it brings accountability. In the system brings the accountability, not the person. Because it's really easy to personalize accountability. But if you can make it the system and you can tie it to their goals, they have to face like, hey, I want these goals for me, and the system will help me, but I'm not doing it, is a whole different mindset than this guy's putting a ton of pressure on me to do this, and then now he becomes adversarial. Like, I think that's a very important distinction early on, right? And then, I'm such a believer that we serve and we help people, right? So, hey, you leave your family, you come to work here for us. What do you want to get done? What can I help you get done? Like, what is it that's your hot button? And when you align that way with people and you serve them and you get aligned, and those are aligned with the company goals, look at, if you help everybody. If you had, I know you said this at one of our leadership meetings about 5 years ago, and it blew me away. You said, my goal this year is to help you guys hit all your goals. And I think that year I had probably one of the best years of my life. And just knowing that, like, I've got someone in my corner and they're rooting for me, and they're going to tell me like it is, and their objective is to help me. And, there's no dark hidden agenda or black helicopter kind of stuff going on, or any what do they call those conspiracy theories, which people go to that, right? Like, oh, if you could just get connected that way and you serve people and say, hey, look, if I had 12 people and I help them all accomplish what they want, I'm going to get what I want.
Yeah.
It's a law. I think they call that law of compensation and law of increasing return, right?
Yeah.
So help people, serve them, help them hit their goals. So those are significant. And then teaching them in their language. I noticed a lot of people really go to parental language, words like you, should, always, never, why did you do this? And it triggers emotions and shuts down communication. And there's an art. Most of the leaders I work with have a really hard time with that. And I'm correcting them strongly in that, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so there's a whole group of words you should never really be using. And I just used one of them, should. You shouldn't should all over people is what a friend of mine says.
You're demonstrating for us, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are significant, I think. Because then people feel listened to, they feel heard, they feel cared for, they feel like they have a clear career path, and that becomes home for them.
Yeah.
So
really well put. Well, I know we're getting close to the end here. Hopefully for whoever was able to attend today, you picked up a few things that were useful to you. If you have issues that are on your mind that are not getting answered on some of these, please, communicate that to us at the link below. There's a fair amount of resources and tools available for you for the asking. So, feel free to click on the link to pursue some of those. And you can stay tuned for our next episode. Anthony, any other closing comments from you, sir?
Yeah, I love something that Gary Vaynerchuk says, and he's colorful in his language, but he really is real. And he says, the new credibility in business and sales communication is transparency, vulnerability, and genuine. And that's the spot. That's a great spot to be communicating from. And if you're that way, I've heard you say this too, Chris, people will be that way with you. And that's one of the ways you're able to have those, make it easier to talk with people and go through it. And that can happen everywhere in your life and really enrich your life. So So that's what we want for people. We want them to have a enriched and powerful life.
Yeah. Yeah. This goes deeper than just somebody's career. It really should. And in fact, I don't know that it's even possible to extricate your career from your day-to-day life. I think it's all so blended together. And it's not to say that there aren't plenty of challenges in life, but sometimes the fun in life is tackling the challenges, one at a time, and the sense of accomplishment from addressing the things that are thrown at us and the growth that comes from it. So, yeah. Anthony, you are loved and respected by many, including myself. The work that you do, I really appreciate you being here today to chat with me about some of these topics. And I'm excited about our next call and our next fireside chat. Maybe we get a little fireside action going.
Okay, look, going. Well, I jotted some names down of people I think it would be good to talk with. And Chris, the same thing to you. You've helped me live a life and accomplish things and impact others' lives in a way. And you made promises to me and you kept them. And so many sales leaders in my past life made many promises and keep them. And you stand out to me for the same reason. So thank you for you too.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we make a good team, and it's always, and this, like, you're talking about the company that went from 16 million to 32 million in the last year. It's a lot of fun to work with people who want to put in some new practices and have them pay off. And when you get to see the results, it's super fun.